5-minute tax guides from your 5-minute tax guy. Short lessons to help you navigate the treacherous, hazardous, and totally unpredictable U.S. federal tax code. Itemized deductions. When completing a tax return, you need to decide if you're going to take the standard deduction or if you're going to itemize your deductions. For most taxpayers, the choice is clear, and even more so under the new Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which became effective for the 2018 tax year. Most taxpayers will take the standard deduction, but if you're not one of those, then this video will cover itemized deductions so that you can get the biggest tax deduction that you are entitled to. Before we talk about any specific itemized deductions, let's take a look at a Schedule A, which is the form that the IRS uses to list itemized deductions. The Schedule A shown here is from the 2015 tax year, but the one for the current tax year looks almost identical with a few minor variations. Notice that the form is divided into sections, covering each category of deduction, including medical, taxes, interest, charitable, and other. This video will cover only medical deductions. You can check out my other videos to get information on the other types of itemized deductions. The list of other videos in this series can be found in the description under this video. The first category of itemized deductions that we will cover will be medical, since that is the first one that appears on the Schedule A. What medical expenses are deductible? Medical expenses are the costs of diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, and prevention of disease, including costs for treatments affecting any part or function of the body. Medical expenses also include costs for dental care and the cost of health care and dental care insurance premiums paid with after-tax funds. The first and foremost thing that is important to note is that you can only deduct medical expenses that are in excess of 7.5% of your adjusted gross income, or AGI. And that 7.5% is effective for the 2017 and 2018 tax years. And then beginning in the 2019 tax year, the percentage changes to 10%. Here's an example. Your AGI is $42,550. Multiply that by 7.5%, and that equals $3,191. You can only deduct medical expenses greater than $3,191. So if you have qualified medical expenses of $10,600, you would only be able to deduct $7,409 of that amount. And then in 2019, using the same circumstances, you would only be able to deduct the expenses in excess of $4,255, which is 10% of $42,550, and that would be $6,345 of deductible medical expenses. It is probably easier to talk about what is not deductible rather than trying to list out everything that is. Examples of medical expenses which are not deductible appear below. Some of the most notable ones are expenses for your general health, even if following your doctor's advice, such as health club dues, household help, even if recommended by a doctor, social activities such as dancing or swimming lessons, and any trips for general health improvement, funeral, burial, or cremation expenses, life insurance or income protection policies, medical insurance included in a car insurance policy, medicines that you buy without a prescription, and prescription drugs you bought in another country, and then surgery for purely cosmetic reasons and weight loss expenses not for the treatment of obesity or other disease. The chart below shows examples of medical expenses which are deductible. Please note that these are only examples and it is not a comprehensive list. I'll just give you a few moments to look over the list.
It's bigger than me.
Just kidding. There's no need to try to memorize all the expenses that are or aren't deductible. You can always come back here and refresh your memory, or you can look at a list in IRS Publication 17 under Itemized Deductions-Medical. You can just do a Google search for Pub 17. What expenses can I deduct on this year's tax return? You can include only medical expenses that you paid this year, regardless of when the services were provided. If you pay medical expenses by check, the day you mail or deliver the check generally is the date of payment. If you use a pay-by-phone or online account to pay for medical expenses, the date reported on the statement of the financial institution showing when payment was made is the date of payment. If you use a credit card, include medical expenses you charge to your credit card in the year the charge is made, not when you actually pay the amount charged. Whose medical expenses can you deduct? You can generally include medical expenses you pay for yourself, as well as those you pay for someone who is your spouse or your dependent, either when the services were provided or when you paid for them. Dependents. You can include medical expenses you paid for your dependent. For you to include these expenses, the person must have been your dependent either at the time the medical expenses were provided or at the time you paid the expenses. A person generally qualifies as your dependent for purposes of the medical expense deduction if both of the following requirements are met. The person was a qualifying child or a qualifying relative, and the person was a U.S. citizen or national or a resident of the United States, Canada, or Mexico. See my video Exemptions and Dependents to find out who is a qualifying child and who is a qualifying relative. You can click the link in the upper right corner of this video. Reimbursement. You can include in medical expenses only those amounts paid during the taxable year for which you received no insurance or other reimbursement. This means that if you paid $3,000 in medical expenses and your health insurance company reimbursed you for $2,100 of those expenses, then you can only deduct the unreimbursed expenses, which would be $900. One last thing to note, you must use Form 1040 to claim any itemized deductions, including medical expenses. You cannot claim itemized deductions when filing 1040A or Form 1040EZ. For more great 5-minute tax guides, check out the other videos in my 5-minute tax guide video series. See the list in the description below this video.